Round 5 action here from YETICON 2.0, November 18th, 2023 in Lakewood, Colorado. This is Atlantic Rules Old School Magic the Gathering. This is a battle in round 5 of a couple of spicy brewers. On the left, we have Josh Davis. Josh Davis is playing a cool blue-black Flyers build, which is very interesting, very unique. Haven't seen a build like this before. Note the unstable mutations there. It'd be cool to see if those come into play. On your right, you have Brian Mann. Brian Mann is the defending champion of the Spice Master at YETICON. He took that award last year, and he actually would go on to win the Spice Award again this year. This is a red and white Circle of Protection build that is meant to turn things red with Chaos Lace and then defend against them with things like COP Red. He does have Repentant Blacksmith in there, with protection from red, some Orcish Artillery, and a bunch of very interesting cards, and you know that the deck photo there is in a red mana symbol shape. So these players are getting ready for their match. Both players coming in at 0-4 here in the final regular round at YETICON. Let's go see how things shake out in Game 1. Both players taking a look at their opening hands. There's Josh with a couple of threats there. Brian, I can see a Soul Ring and a Lightning Bolt. A little bit of shadow there on the hand. Thanks for showing that off, though. Over on Josh's side, we have an Island, Soul Ring, Felwar Stone, and Sago. All right, here comes Brian with a Mountain and a Soul Ring right back. So both players accelerating out with early mana. Let's see what Josh comes up with. Access to lots of mana now after dropping a Swamp. Here's a Soul Ring and the Island, and there is the Serendib right there. So 3/4 flyer, a Dark Ritual, and there's the Hypnotic Spectre. So 5 damage of flyers in the air, ready to start coming over. Let's see what answers Brian can come up with. Brian has plenty of mana on his own. There is a Chain Lightning, I believe, on the Hypnotic Spectre. That'll take care of that threat. So the hand loss is not going to be a threat for Brian just yet. Brian taps 3 more, and there's a COP Red. And so right there, he likely, he takes a mana burn on that one because he didn't have a red source to put mana in. There's an unstable mutation right there on the Serendib Efreet. So Josh took a damage in his upkeep, and then now he's swinging in for 6. Brian goes to 13. So the unstable mutation gives +3/+3, but the creature shrinks every upkeep. So here is Josh. He's going to take a damage from the Serendib, and then it will shrink down to 5/5. So it's still getting +3/+3, but it has a -1/-1 counter. Tapping 2 swamps, there's a Hymn to Torok, and there is Brian with Chaos Lace, turning the Serendib Efreet into a red creature, and that sticks. So the red creature will stick around for the rest of the time that Serendib is in the game. And there is a Disenchant on the Unstable. The counter does stick around. So, yep, they're talking about this. The -1/-1 counter does stick around, even though Unstable Mutation is gone. Hymn to Torok is going to resolve here. It looks like a Repentant Blacksmith goes to the graveyard. So that Serendib Efreet, if you're keeping track at home, is now a 3/4 with a -1/-1 counter. It's also red. So Brian can now defend himself with the Circle of Protection red. So he'll swing in. Brian will pay a mana to prevent the damage, and we'll keep going. So right now the Serendib is going to be pinging Josh for 1 damage every turn. There he is. So Josh is taking a damage down to 16. Brian at 13 here, but Brian improving his position. Josh is just forcing Brian to use some mana here and swinging in. Why not at this point in the game? Let's see. Brian is kind of stabilized a little bit, and Josh is now on the clock. Let's see if either player can find another threat to play out and change up our game state. Brian doing exactly what his deck wants to do, though. He got a threat off the board with Burn. Brian plays a Lotus, and he's going to use that mana for Orcish Artillery. Orcish Artillery is a creature, and it's a 1/3, I believe, but normally you tap it to do 2 targeted damage, but it deals 3 damage to its controller as well. But you can prevent that with the COP Red, so it's a nice combo right there. Brian's going to play a Plateau. So Brian has turned 1 Serendib Efreet into a red creature. The other one is not red, though. The other Serendib, even though they have the green frame on the revised edition, is a blue creature. Brian's going to play the Repentant Blacksmith, 1/2 protection from red. It's on the ground. So that Blacksmith can actually attack through a red Serendib Efreet. But right now, Josh takes 2 damage. Brian's got 2 dibs coming across. Brian taps his Plateau. There is a Lightning Bolt. and then he will use the Orcish Artillery for the last 2. The Lightning Bolt does 3, the Artillery does 2 more, so that takes out that Serendib Ifrit. And then Brian's able to prevent the damage from the other one, and he prevents the damage from the Artillery as well. So there's Brian attacking in with the protection from red creature, the Repentant Blacksmith. So those can go right underneath the flyer there. And here's Brian on end step, I believe, doing his damage. Yep, so Brian is targeting the damage at Josh. Josh goes to 8. And Brian has, there's 1 damage coming through, and that's where they remind you can't block the pro-red creature to the transformed red Serendib. And still should have that -1/-1 counter on it also. Josh has a Hymn to Torok. Brian says, all right, in response to that, Lightning Bolt. Josh says, counter. The Lightning Bolt is countered, and then it looks like Brian discards maybe a land there. I can't quite tell down at the bottom of your screen. So Hymn to Torok does resolve, but right now Brian is kind of in a commanding position here. He's 1 damage away. There it is. So Brian says, yep, let's go. I'll do 1 damage attacking with the Blacksmith, 2 damage with the Orcs, and then next upkeep, the Serendib will finish the job. So players are going to pack it up here for game number 1. I'm glad you got to see both players really on their plan. We saw the Unstable Mutation on the side of Josh, and then Brian was able to overcome that with the COP Red and the Chaos Lace combo. So let's see what these players have for game number 2 after sideboard. Both players taking a look at their opening hands for game number 2. Josh is going to be on the play, having lost game 1. Brian looking to see how he can defend the action from Josh. Josh is with a fast start here with a land, Mox, and 2 flying men. Count them, 2 flying men. So that is 2 damage in the air. Brian also has a fast start. He has red and white coming down. The Mox Pearl and the Mountain. We're going to bolt 1 of the flying men. Brian's plan needs to stay alive long enough to really get his defenses up, to get the walls up. So using a burn spell there early is a nice boon for Brian. Josh is going to swing in for 1 with the remaining flying men and says go. Brian plays another land down and passes the turn right back. So we have another damage coming across the board. Brian's going to quickly go to 18. Unstable Mutation would be a great card to play on those flying men, but you have to be careful to the bolt in response or the swords in response that could be on Brian's side. That's an easy way to 2-for-1 yourself. Here comes Josh activating his factory, and Brian will strip mine the factory away, and then we swing over with the flying men. So Brian's strip mine is down. This is a 1 strip mine legal format, by the way, for those of you keeping track at home. Atlantic Rules Old School. So that is the only one that you can have in your deck. Josh's side, he taps blue. There's the Unstable Mutation, +3/+3. And there is indeed the response to that, and he just gains 1 life because the mutation had not yet resolved. So you do that before the Unstable comes into play. Creature's out of the game, you gain life equal to its power, but it's just 1 before it resolves, and then you suffer the 2-for-1 loss. It is a risk you take with aggressive decks, and these players are very aware of that already, so they know what they're getting into when they put a deck together like this. And Josh passes the turn back to Brian. Brian's at 17, Josh at 19 after 1 factory hit, and now 17 after 2 factory hits. So Brian is going for this one the old-fashioned way. Instead of the COP Chaos Lace, going for the old swing with the Mishra's Factory. Pretty well-proven strategy here in the old-school community. There is a quick flying men and a quick bolt coming that way. We're tapping a City of Brass, and we're going to counter that bolt. So Josh takes a damage to tap the City of Brass for blue, counters the bolt, and the flying men will stick around for now. Here's Brian is activating and attacking with the factory, so Josh goes down to 12. Brian's still at 17 here and thinking about what he wants to do. Likely would want to save a Chaos Lace and a Circle of Protection combo for a bigger threat. A Swords to a smaller creature is a fine choice. That way Josh isn't gaining too much life. Brian does play with plenty of burn, but you still don't want your opponent going up too high when you're on a damage deck. That is Brian's strategy in the end here, of course. There is a quick attack with the factory again. And the blue-black are tough colors to deal with artifacts. Now, that one will take care of it. That's a Serendib Ifrit 3/4 flyer. Blue-black have a trickier time with that. Brian quickly plays a Spirit Link. Maybe you're holding on to that since the beginning of the game. Spirit Link gives it close to Life Link, though it's actually a triggered ability. So when the Serendib pings Josh for 1 in the upkeep, Brian gains 1 because it's actually the Serendib that's doing the damage. So it's not just the combat damage. It's the damage that it does there as well. So right now, Josh is losing a life every upkeep, and Brian's going to gain that life back. And that's a frustrating position to be in. I've been in that position with a Serendib Efreet that you want to use as an aggressive piece, and instead it's putting the opponent up on life. And of course, if he attacks with it, the Serendib will do the 3 damage, and then Brian will get a triggered ability on the stack to have him gain 3 life. So here is a double ritual and a Jam-Day Tome, and he's going to activate it. Yeah, so he's going to use a remaining mana from one of the rituals that was left over, plus 3 more from the Urborg. He does draw a card. Now he's attacking for 1 with the Flying Men. Brian is at 18 now. Josh down to 9. And Brian has to think about attacking because the Serendib can still fight a factory. Brian will gain life when the Serendib does the damage, but he could get the other factory through. Josh on his side. Pump fakes a Felwar tap. Felwar gives him access to white and red. He's going to attack in the air for 1 with the Flying Man. He's going to rumble. Josh taps the City of Brass, the Felwar Stone, and the Urborg for the Hypnotic Spectre. There it is. So he had to tap the city because of the double black requirement of the Hypnotic Spectre. So 2/2 flyer knocks a card out of your hand at random if it connects. So right now, Brian has a pretty good defensive shield up for the Serendib, but does not quite have one for the Hypnotic Spectre. Let's see if he held on to some burn. We've seen a couple of swords, and we've seen, I believe, 1 lightning bolt from Brian this game. Brian may be looking at his graveyard to see what's all there as well. Josh certainly knows what's in Brian's graveyard. He's seen what has been played out. So Brian is between offering a trade with a factory, or Brian looks like just says go. So after a little think, Brian's going to go up, and Josh is going to go down. Josh is at 6. Brian is at 19. So the Hypnotic Spectre, if it connects, is going to take a card from his hand, and it sure does. So he takes 3 damage, does Brian, and then now he loses a red Elemental Blast. So the red blast could have been used to take out the Serendib, but right now the Serendib is actually helping Brian, so yeah, there's not much to do there. He loses a card. And now it's going to be Brian's turn. Josh passes back. So after that attack, Brian takes a little damage, loses a card. There's a Spirit Link on the Hypnotic Spectre. I believe the Hypnotic Spectre will still do its damage, and it will still trigger the card ability, but then Brian will gain that life. So I believe that's how the ruling will work there. It does not prevent damage. The creature still does its damage to you, and then any damaging effects will go on the stack. Let's see how the players play this out. Josh plays another island, plenty of mana. He's going to, like he's activating the Jam-Day Tome, 4 mana to draw a card. He's tapping 3, tapping 4, City of Brass, and then there's the damage going on for the city, and then Brian does red blast the Brain Geyser. So he attempted to Brain Geyser for a few extra cards to try to dig out of this one. And it looks like he maybe declined an attack there. He declined an attack on the Hypnotic Spectre on Brian. He kept that home. All right, Josh is drawing cards, so card advantage is leaning towards Josh, and it's getting better as the game goes on. Here's another Serendib Efreet, so it's going to be dicey because he'll be losing 2 life in his next upkeep. So Brian is only 1 damage away from a victory here in this game and in this match. They're going to untap. Brian's just going to gain the 1, but Josh will lose 2 life, 2 damage from the 2 Serendibs. He's got another Serendib Efreet. He said, let's play him out. Let's attack for 3. And there's a fist bump. So that is it for this match. It goes 2-0 to Brian and the Circle of Protection. There's an Earthquake. Brian shows the Earthquake off. Earthquake not as effective against the flying creatures over on Josh's side, but it does make a nice finisher, especially if you have a life advantage. Now, these players did decide to play out a third bonus game. So the match part is over, but there was still plenty of time left in the round. So we are going to get some bonus magic. Game 3, kind of, coming right up. Bonus magic here in round 5 from YETICON 2.0. Brian does take the match 2 games in the official record books, but because we have such a sporting and fun community, these players are giving us some bonus content, and we thank them for their good service. So on this one, I believe the players have gone back to their main decks. So I believe they de-sideboarded after we went through, so I think we're just playing a game 1 again here just for funsies. Very quickly, Josh attacks with a factory. Brian says Swords to Plowshares. Josh goes up to 22. Brian plays out a Circle of Protection red. And waiting on that, we're awaiting a Chaos Lace to make something red. Here comes a Dark Ritual. And there is the Hypnotic Spectre. That's not a Spectre, that's a Serendipity. Never mind, Serendipity, and then there's a Spirit Link on it anyway. So again, just like last time, Josh is staring down the effects of the Spirit Link on the Serendip. It's a great answer for that card because every turn, Josh is going to take a damage, Brian's going to gain a life from that. We're in Josh's turn now again. I believe we didn't do the damage swap there, that upkeep. And he passes back to Brian. So there's Brian talking about it. So there we go. They do back that up and correct that. And now we're passing back to Brian. Blue Elemental Blast on the Orcs. Brian does activate them in response and then prevents the damage. So players play that out. Brian has a Chain Lightning. And just like that, we're still going. Josh goes to 15. Brian goes up to 22. After that exchange, we have a Hypnotic Spectre and then Flying Men on Josh's side. Yeah, I wasn't sure of the timing of that last exchange with the Blue Blast and the Orcs in terms of Summoning Sickness and the timing on that as to when in the turn that happened. Brian has another Chain Lightning, this one for the Hippie. And yeah, Brian is happy to leave the Serendib around, but he doesn't want the Hypnotic Spectre coming over every turn. So he will take care of that issue. Here comes an Unstable Mutation on the non-summoning sick Flying Men. Gosh, I'd love to see cards like Flying Men making an appearance and Unstable Mutation. So he's going to swing in for 4. Nice hit. That will outrace the damage of the Serendib. So here we are. Josh will untap. He'll lose a life. Brian will gain a life. The Flying Men will get a -1/-1 counter. So at this point, if Unstable Mutation is removed, the Flying Men will actually be gone because the -1/-1 sticks around, so they'd be a 0/0. Here's an Unstable for the other one, a fresh Unstable. So now there's 4 damage plus 3 damage. And Brian says Chaos Lace on the Flying Men, and he will prevent it. So now Brian will take 3 damage from the other one. And remember, the Chaos Lace is permanent, so it's not a till end of turn. The Flying Men is a red card. That particular Flying Men in the middle of your screen is a red card now. So we now have untap, send it to Brian. Brian says draw go. We had a Mind Twist there. And Brian discarded a couple of cards. I couldn't quite see what's in his discard pile. Josh puts down Gloom. All right, Gloom means all white spells cost 3 more to activate, and Circle of Protection costs 3 more to activate. So now Brian, in response to the Gloom, is prematurely, preventatively putting protections from the Circle of Protection on the red cards, because once the Gloom comes in, it's going to cost him more to activate. It's going to cost him 4 mana to activate it. So actually, as of right now, he can't activate it at all. So, and there was a Swords, I believe, on the non-red on the non-red Flying Men in that sequence as well. Josh puts down a Felwar Stone. So that was a quick sequence there of Brian trying to get as much white and enchantments and spells cast before the Gloom comes in. So there we go. Looks like that Flying Men has expired. The -1/-1 counters have overwhelmed the +3/+3 granted by the unstable. So now we're just back to where we were with game 2, with a Serendib Efreet pinging Josh for 1 and Brian gaining 1. Brian can't do anything white, including that COP, because he's going to need 4 mana at minimum to do anything. So this would be a great opportunity for Josh to get back in this one. If he could get a threat on the board now, it would be really helpful. But unfortunately, I believe it looks like he's not getting the draws he'd like. He still has enough life to work with. That Serendib would still be a good threat for him. As his life total starts to dwindle, it could be trouble. But right now at 10 and 9, he can start to get in there and outrace the life drain. Basically, it's a drain of 1 every turn for Brian. So I'm sure Josh would love to see more threats. He's got plenty of mana, and the gloom is keeping a hold. Here the players are talking about a ruling of the gloom or of the Spirit Link interaction or the Circle of Protection interaction there. Okay, it looks like they forgot a damage and they moved that back. All right, Brian is just he's just looking for another mana source. He could still cast his 1 mana burn spells, the red spells, no problem. Looks like Brian discarding a Repentant Blacksmith to hand size. So Brian with a full grip there and not able to cast cards out. Brian getting a little bit stuck on mana. Looks like Brian discards another Repentant Blacksmith. That's a 2 mana card by itself, so it would cost 5 under the gloom. Even a disenchant to get rid of the gloom will cost 5. There's a Jam-Day Tome for Brian, so he was still a mana short of that. Desperately looking to rip a land here of any kind. That would turn a lot of things on for him. And Brian, unfortunately, is even unable to use his red burn spells. So here is a Brain Geyser. Brian does have a red spell there. We have a red Elemental Blast to try to counter it, and then a blue blast quickly from Josh to counter the red blast. So the Brain Geyser does resolve. That's a big Brain Geyser. Josh is able to really reload here. And let's see if he has a threat he can deploy. There's a Hymn to Torok. That will take a couple of cards out of Brian's hand. He's got a Chaos Lace and a red blast. And there's Josh puts the Hymn to Torok in the graveyard. Josh goes to 3. Here comes another Flying Men. So that Flying Men can start getting to Brian, but Brian is at 27 life, it looks like. There is a Lightning Bolt and a quick... Josh just drops a quick counter spell, and then it looks like they go ahead and pack it in. So quick opportunities on that Lightning Bolt for the 3. The Serendib was there. That was going to be a tough one. So very cool matchup here for Game 3. I guess the players did not sideboard things out. There were still plenty of blasts in there that must have been sideboard cards. So I'm glad we got a bonus Game 3 here, players. Congratulations on a great showing here at YETICON. Happy to showcase all kinds of different decks here, and we wanted to, in the final round here, showcase some of the cool and interesting builds that we had show up. And we had a great mix of spiky and spicy builds at YETICON. There's an Island of Wok Wok, very cool on Josh's side. So great to see all of these cards make an appearance after all these years. For now, for us, we're going to go on to the semifinals and finals here from YETICON. I'll see you next video.